Good day, everyone. It is Caitlin, and today we are making infant shirts for our 19th century baby's wardrobe. Hello and welcome. So we're going to continue our little journey of making baby clothes, and as a reminder, this is not an announcement. I am not pregnant. This is me just trying to avoid the deadline of pregnancy, because once I get pregnant, there's only so many months before a baby comes, and I have to have this thing dressed in like 3 different centuries, which is ridiculous. Sometimes I wonder why we even do this hobby. That's a lot of clothes for like little tiny humans. Anyway, I don't like that deadline, so I'm going to go ahead and start getting things done so that by the time I get pregnant, I don't feel as stressed to get all these things accomplished. So today we're going to work on infant shirts, which is, well, is a shirt. The type we're going to make is called an open shirt, so there is no closures on it. It's actually a really simple thing. The only thing is, and they're pretty simple to make. I have lots of originals. Of course, I didn't bring them with me. They're in the storage unit, but I'll try to get them before the end of this video. But yeah, we're going to use some linen and we're going to cut ourselves some shirts. But we are going to make several shirts. So we're going to make, I have 2 sizes of shirts to be made up, a large and a small. Small should be about newborn to about age 6 months. And remember, they're open shirts. So there's no closures. They're going to overlap. So if they're a little bit big, it's fine. And the other one should take them to at least a year, if not 18 months to 24 months. Although we are going to also, after 12 months, we're going to start making chemises for them just as well. So that'll be starting next month. Or next week, sorry. I keep forgetting that this is like a weekly series. Anyway, so as I was saying, I don't have the originals with me. What I do have is pictures of my originals, which I blew up on the computer screen, made them exactly the same size on the computer screen as they were in real life. And I know this because I have measurements. And I traced it out. So this is the big shirt. And this is the little one, partially done. There's a little bit extra here. And this is without seam allowances. So I do need to make sure that I do that. So I'm going to cut with a little bit of a seam allowance. So I'm making 4 of each size, because instead of my usual 1 to wear plus a spare, this is underwear, and my general rule of thumb is 1 per day plus a spare. And because we typically go to 3-day events, 4. Okay. So I think that is 4. Okay, so that's 4 backs right there. So this should be 3 more, which will be fronts. We're going to cut this off a little bit more. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4. And then these 3 are going to be fronts, which means I need to cut them down the center. And I need 1 more front of this size. Alright, so I have now 4 front, well, I have 8 fronts that are halves, and then 4 backs. And I'm going to slit right down here. This may have to be done in sections. Okay. Right into the end of the slit. Okay. Alrighty. Now I'm going to cut the other ones, the big ones, exactly the same. Just, obviously they're going to be bigger. Quite a bit bigger. You can see the size difference. And then we'll come back and I'll talk about the first steps in sewing. Alright, so first step, we're going to take the backs, a back, unfold it, match it with the front, and we're just going to put pins, and then I take another front, and I put it on this side. And I'm just working on the smaller size first. I'll do the second size in a bit. There's another one pinned together. I'm unsure how I want to finish the sleeve edges yet. I have some options, plenty of options based on the originals that I own and some of the accents that I've seen. Lots and lots of options. So I just got to decide which one I want to do. Alright, now we get to start sewing. This one I've kind of started sewing a little bit, but on all four of these seams, so both side seams and both shoulder seams, we're doing a run and fell seam, which just basically means we're going to run, do a running stitch. But I chose this particular style, one, because it's super easy to sew, it's super easy to cut multiple at the same time, and also because there are no gussets, so it means it's very, very quick to sew. That is run. We're going to take, I'll go ahead and do that same seam. I'm going to cut half of my seam allowance, but only on the back side. And I'll leave the other side. I'll leave the front. Okay. And then we're going to fold that in. So I've done that with this other side. I folded it in the front, folded it towards the back, so now I have a nice finished edge. And we're going to stitch that down. Actually, I'm going to pin it first. Be very careful around this curved edge. It's going to want to wrinkle on you. Just kind of ease it gently. It's on the inside towards the back. So, on the inside we have a nice smooth seam. So there's lots of reasons for doing run and fell seam. Run is that it finishes the edges, so you're not getting raw edges, which means less likely it'll ravel on you. The other reason is that the seam is very close to this. There isn't any bulk there, therefore it's usually easier on baby skin, and it's not as rough. There's nothing to irritate baby skin. It's a very fine seam, and it lays very nicely, especially once ironed. It lays very nicely against the skin. But do notice I left this part completely done, so I'm not doing any of this yet. I am just doing the two shoulder seams and the two side seams on every shirt with the run and fell seam, just as we discussed. And we'll come back and do the hemming in a little bit. Alright, I apologize for my state of dress, but I'm about to go do some stuff in living history and sewing on my 1870s chemise. But we're going to go ahead and start hemming these shirts. So, let's start down here. I'm going to do a very narrow hem. So I ironed over about 1/4 inch, and I'm just going to fold that in half, so I'll have an 8-inch seam. And we'll just do a regular hem stitch. And I thought long and hard about how I'm going to trim these shirts, and I had some options. So I thought I could trim all of the smaller shirts one way and all the bigger shirts one way, and that would help distinguish against the sizes. But because I'm doing laundry marks, that's not necessarily something that I need. If I wasn't going to do laundry marks, that's definitely the option I would go with. But I'm going to mark the sizes with ink, so we don't need to really worry about that. So I could do them all the same, make it super simple and very, time efficient. So yeah, that's an option. But what I think I've decided I'm going to do is have 4 different ways of trimming them, since there are 4 shirts for each size, and do one way of trimming for each size. So I'm going to do one that's completely plain, meaning that there are there's no embellishments. I'm just going to do a plain hem even on the sleeves. There will be no embellishment. And I have a set of originals. I believe it's 3 shirts that date probably from the 1820s to the 1850s. And it's all from the same child. They're all marked with the same name. And they're all trimmed exactly the same way. And it's this very simple embroidery pattern, just I believe around the sleeves. And then I want to do at least one uber fancy shirt, by which I mean I have an original with lace. And that leaves the 4th one, which it kind of needs to be an in-between one. So I've thought about doing one that's fairly simple, but just maybe scalloped sleeve edges. I mean, easy embroidered one has that as well. So it would just be a step down from that. Instead of that plus the little embroidery pattern, it would be just the scallop sleeves. And I think that's probably what I'm going to end up doing. So I'm going to go right ahead and run and fell, as soon as I get these done anyway, the bigger shirts. And hem them as well, so that we have all the shirts at the same spot that I can now, work on. I can now embroider. But the nice thing about these shirt styles is, again, they are so super simple. And even what I'm doing now is all in one seam. It all connects. So I'm just hemming it all the way around the shirt in one simple seam. And then everything will be done except for the sleeves, which most of them are going to get trimmed. One of them is going to get hemmed. So I do already have that ironed over on that one that's going to get hemmed. And I don't know if it's because it's easy or if because this is the first item of actual clothing that we're getting to, but I actually really enjoy baby shirt making. And the nice thing about baby clothes is I don't have to make two different things for two different genders. It's all the same because quite frankly they didn't know what they were having before it popped out. So it's just they all look the same. Boys and girls, if mom had fancy taste, they were dressed in lace and pretty embroideries. And if not, dressed plainly. It didn't matter if there was a girl or a boy. Baby colors were typically blue and pink, just like they are today, but they weren't specified by gender. There are plenty of not really articles, but stories. That's the word, stories, where it talks about the nursery being pink and it was a little boy, and that's totally normal because mom just picked whatever color she liked best, and that was her nursery color. And then whatever baby popped out was, had that color nursery. And apparently a lot of moms liked pink because I've been reading a lot about nurseries and that decor and that sort of thing. And a lot of moms chose pink. Like, it was well accepted that blue and pink, the light colors, the baby colors, were the baby colors. But it was really up to mom and her personal preference of, I like pink, so my nursery's going to have pink bows everywhere. And she ends up having, baby William. And that's just seen as completely normal, which it was literally just parents' preference on color. And so I've kind of, mentally, because I haven't actually started preparing because I'm not pregnant, but I've decided I'm kind of doing the same thing. And out of the two, pink and blue, my favorite color is blue, so my nursery's going to be blue. Alright, working on the big ones. So the small ones hemmed. We're going to get the big ones to the same point so that, again, we can trim them at the same time, because that's going to be far more efficient. Once you start something, it's easier to do that same thing over and over and over again because you get really good and your hands get very used to doing it. And then you move on to the next step, and it also saves a lot of time between, walking between the iron and waiting for the iron to heat up, and all that time is saved when you do things by step. And truly the most efficient for me would have been to do all the shirts at the same time exactly. But I broke it up a little bit because I didn't want to get bogged down. There's a fine line between, being efficient and, doing all the steps at the same time, and getting bogged down because you're doing like 12 of them at once, and it's just, you get tired of doing the same thing over and over again. So there's a line there. Only a few minutes before I need to start moving on, getting on the road. So I'm trying to get these things run and felled at least so that I can hem them at it's not really an event, I'm teaching a class, but everyone else can embroider while I sit here and make baby clothes. Alright, let's go ahead and fell the bigger shirts. Forgot to put a knot in them at the thread. Which you don't have to do, but in fact, I don't think I should be on baby clothes, but if it's a small knot, it shouldn't be a big deal. Otherwise, you just pull it very close to the edge and just kind of go over it a couple of times to keep it secure. And then you don't need a knot. But I got a lot more shirts to do, or I guess I got 3 more shirts to do. I gotta finish this one first. Then I have 3 more shirts to do, and then I get to do all the hemming again. And then we'll be finally at the same spot where we can start doing the pretty stuff. Alright, so what we're going to do is go into these little corners because there's a little bit of a raw edge there, and you don't want to pull on this because it will rip. So to help that, what this other original did, one I have with me, is she made a little bit of a, not really a loop, but a little line of thread. I went across it with a buttonhole stitch. So it's like a thread eye. When you do hooks and eyes, I think we've done a video on thread eyes, but they did have them. And this is basically exactly what that is. And it just provides a little bit of extra strength right there. But you can see it in that little original right there. There's the edge, and you can see my finger through it. And she did it on all of them. Just an extra way to kind of reinforce that edge. Alright, let's talk about the sleeve trim for this first one. So, second one really, because I did the plain ones already, because that's what these were here. These are my finished piles, the small ones and the big ones. And so those are the plain ones. Right here, started working on the edge. And I'm essentially just doing a very plain scalloped edging. So this is what it looks like finished. Super simple. And I'm just doing scallops that are about ½ inch apart, and they're about a ¼ inch deep, and then maybe about 1/8 of an inch wide, I guess is what you would call that. So whenever you're doing any type of white work like this, typically you would outline it first, which is what I'm doing now. And I'm mostly freehanding this. I didn't feel like it was worth drawing out a pattern. So I think instead of the embroidered edging, we're gonna do that same embroidery, but instead of doing it as an edging, we're gonna do it just directly on the fabric. It's gonna be the easiest thing. So it'll be slightly more complicated than this what I'm doing right now, but not by much. And the fancy one will still use the lace. So I'm just going to trim it down, and I am pre-trimming it. Sometimes I also, another way of doing it is to do the embroidery and then trim around the embroidery, and I do that a lot of times too. This particular one, I just wanted to do it this way. And then essentially it's just a buttonhole stitch, and I have a top and a bottom to kind of gauge where everything goes. I'm going to finish this one, and then I got to do the big one the same way, and then we'll move on to finishing the fancier embroidered shirt, the other edging. So I decided not to do anything fancy with this one. I tried a couple of embroidery patterns, including the one from the original, and it doesn't like to work on the thicker fabric. So I think part of it is I don't have thick enough thread, and part of it is I don't have thin enough fabric, so it's not giving me the look that I want. And I need to get these done, and I do not have any of the thinner voile or lawn that I wanted for that here. So I'm just going to do another simple scalloped edge, and we'll have two scalloped edges. One, I was kind of the medium, like a not really fancy, but not really, plain either. And we'll have the one plain one and the one lace one. Alright, so I have this cotton lace, and I am just putting it on the edge. So I realized I made a mistake while looking at that original. So what I did with the hemming is I turned it all to the wrong side. Well, the problem with that is when it's worn, turn it to the right side, this gets flipped down. So what you would normally see is the right side is actually the wrong side, and so they hemmed it accordingly. So parts are hemmed one way and other parts are hemmed another way, and that's not what I did. And I decided I'm just going to go with it, and we'll just have like a pretty little decorative stitch on there is what we're calling it. But yeah, so I am stitching it all to the wrong side, which of course was not my intention, but It is what it is, and it's a baby shirt, and no one's really going to see it, so I've decided it's going to work just the same. If it ever, bothers me down the road, then I will just take it out and redo it. It'd be fine. I just don't feel like doing that right now. And will I actually notice it while I'm, changing a diaper at 3 a.m.? We're going to do this. I'm going to do it the, correct way on the sleeves. So at least on the sleeves it'll look right for being worn. And this looks right, because that's how I want it to look. It's just that when you flip it under the way it's going to be worn, that's the problem. But after this, we are done with the shirts. We're going to get all 8 of them together so we can talk about them and kind of see the differences and that sort of thing, and then finish everything out. And next week we get to work on petticoats, essentially. And they're not actually petticoats, I'm calling them wrappers, but it's essentially a little woolen petticoat. Alright, and this is me putting the lace on the sleeve. So this should look right from the front. And this is our very last one to do. You know what, I think I've decided, sorry, I'm getting over a sinus infection. If I decide I want to change something about these, what I think I'll do instead of doing the fancy embroidery is I'll leave the 2 with scalloped edges plain, and because I had to already hem this to put the lace on it, I would just put lace on the other plain one and have 2, plain embroidered ones and 2 lace ones. And that's if I decide to do that. And here we are. So it is raining outside, so if you hear any noises in the background, that's probably what it is. So we have here the smaller ones and the bigger ones, so you can definitely see the size difference. It's it's just a couple of inches, but when you make it up like that, it looks fairly significant. But we have our lace ones, which again are going to be worn a little bit more like that, because it wouldn't go all the way up. But the pretty little lace. And then underneath we have the embroidered ones, so we have the embroidered edge. But otherwise mostly plain. Again, we have 2 of those because I couldn't be bothered to actually do anything else with them. And then the super plain one on the bottom. So that is all 4 of those little tiny ones. And they're not like super tiny. Like, they're small, but they're not. It'll probably look a little big on a newborn baby. But with how quickly babies grow, you definitely want something that's going to last them more than a couple of weeks, because especially now that we don't live in the 19th century, it sounds like that's going to be worth sewing. Yeah, this will definitely hold a kid up until they're at least 2, which likely I'll have them wear this until they're 1-ish, maybe a little bit after 1, and then from 1, maybe 18 months on, they'll be, well, really 18 months old and on, I'll have them wear just regular shifts and chemises. But there's the lace on that one's the same lace. I had exactly enough. And then of course the embroidered ones that really need to be ironed. They also need to get the dog hair off of them, but that can work out later. And then we have the plain one on the bottom. So those are our cute little baby shirts. But that is our first real level of clothing, I suppose, or our first layer of clothing. I mean, the diapers are essential, but I don't necessarily count them as clothing. So next week we'll get to move on to a little bit more. We'll do, it's like a wrap petticoat. It's just, from what I understand, and I guess I'll get into it more next week. From what I understand, it's the first garment that a baby wears. And it can also be worn underneath the dress as kind of just an extra warm layer since it's made of wool flannel. That's my understanding. But yeah, those are our little baby shirts. Aren't they just adorable? And super simple to make. I am still working on those publications, the How to Build Wardrobes. I have the 1825 to 1850 infant one, about a quarter of the way done. I have the 1830s ladies manual, I think about, it's a little over halfway done, maybe about like 5/8 of the way done. So I am still working on that. It is still coming out. I'm hoping over the summer, since I have time, I can work on those, and that can get in by the end of the summer or get published by the end of the summer. I'm super excited about that. But yeah, this will be in the 1825 to 1850s baby manual, and I will also put in the one with the sleeve like the original I own, and I'll probably put in the Workwoman's Guide one as well, just so there are options, because it's supposed to be a complete manual, so we're getting lots of options of how to do things. But this is a really good first try. I will definitely have to remember when I write the manual to write the correct which one's supposed to be hemmed which way. But yeah, those are our little baby shirts. Aren't they adorable? They definitely need a good pressing. I'm going to wash them first, I think. I have a lot of other things I need to wash anyway. I'm going to wash them. Anyway, I think that's about it for the baby shirts. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. Click the little bell notifications, especially if you're interested in kind of keeping up with how to sew a 19th century baby's wardrobe. And as always, have a fantastic week, and I'll see you back here in the next video.